Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. A few weeks ago, I posted a tutorial for a sideboard for the dining room, or a hutch as some people call them. Today, I'm making a chafing dish to sit on top of the sideboard. I have this vision of my family or my friends getting up at their leisure and arriving into the dining room to a nice hot breakfast. This is one of those pieces that uses just a little bit of my trash stash. Your cutting instructions will be in the description box below. So without any further ado, let's get started. For this project, I'm going to use up some 2mm chipboard that I have. You can of course use wood if you like. So if you want to take out one of your pieces marked A, we're going to do some measuring on this piece because we have to cut out some sections. Starting on the longest side, we're going to make pencil marks at the following measurements. The first one will be at 3mm, then 16mm, 19mm, 32mm, 35mm, and then finally at 48mm. Make those same measurements across the top. Once you've repeated those measurements across the top, you can go ahead and join those lines together. What you should have now is 3 larger sections at 13mm apiece, and then each of the other smaller areas are 3mm apiece. So on the shorter side, we're going to make just 2 measurements. We're going to make a mark at 3.5mm, and then a second mark at 28.5mm. We'll do the same at the top, and then we'll join those lines together as well. Now that I've drawn out that grid, I'm going to cut out the 3 large sections. I want to round off those corners though, because I don't want them to be sharp. So I'm just going in here with a pencil and just making a very small curve to each of those corner pieces. To make the dishes, I'm going to be using this plastic packaging from some Excel gum. This is a nice rectangle shape, and it's the perfect size for the chafing dish. After removing the gum and the foil, I've trimmed around the edge, leaving a lip that's about 2mm wide. I've cut out 3 in total. Now you can see the one on the far left still has some green foil on it. I thought I could just scrape it off after I had put it in. Turns out I couldn't, so I ended up replacing that piece with one that had no foil on it. Before I glue those in, I want to make the base for the chafing dish, because I do want to make sure that it all fits together nice and flush before I glue anything together. So you can take out your second piece marked A, as well as your front and back pieces marked B, and your side pieces marked C. And we're just going to make an open box with these pieces. I'm starting by gluing one of the longer pieces to the base. We'll add our 2 shorter sides in next. That's going to sit on top of the base as well, and it just snugly fits into that L-shaped area. And then finally, that last longer piece. Now I just want to make sure that everything fits together and that I've made that little box deep enough. So to glue this in, I've just put a very thin line of glue around the outside of the cutout area, and now I'm just popping the pan into place. I'm going to use some clamps to hold that down together until the glue dries. Then I'm going to repeat that same process for all 3 pans. To paint the pans, I find that acrylic paint just does not adhere to this type of plastic, so I'm using some silver nail polish. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the bottom part of the pan, because that bottom part will then be protected inside of the base and I won't have to worry about it chipping. So this is the inside of the pan, and then the bottom side is what's going to be painted. The other nice thing about painting on the bottom here is that you don't really have to worry if you get a little bit of the nail polish onto the chipboard. Nobody's going to see it under there anyway. I put the first coat on, let it dry, and then I held it up to the light and I realized that I could see through it fairly well, so I went in and added a second coat. It was here that I realized I needed to change that end piece out and get rid of that green foil. I painted all 3 pans and I've just set them aside to dry, and I'm going to work on the base a little bit. What I'm doing here is I'm just drilling a small hole on what will be the back side, because I want to feed a small black wire in there to act as a cord for the plug-in. I'm cutting off about 6 inches of cord. I can trim it later if I find I don't need that much. I'm putting about a 1/2 inch of that wire into the hole and then bending it over on the inside so that it doesn't slide out. Now I'm ready to glue the pans onto the base. I'm putting some glue all the way around the top edge. I'm going to put some clamps on at this point as well, just to reduce any chance of that top piece warping. Now that everything is dry, I'm going to do some painting. So the plan is to paint the top and the bottom of the chafing dish black. So I'm going to go ahead here and start painting. Now you can see here that I'm not painting the plastic that makes up the trays. I'm just going to paint all the way around it and then the edge piece of the top and the bottom. And again, just painting the edge of the top and the bottom. I'm going to leave that center piece and paint that silver. So now I finished painting the top and the bottom of this piece, including the edge all the way around. So now this center piece here, I'm going to paint silver. And then I'm also going to go around and I'm going to paint the edge or the top of the trays silver as well. I'm still using the silver nail polish, but I have poured a little bit out so that I can use a smaller brush. I'm going to do a second coat, and then I'll add a coat of the glossy podge over top to protect all the paint. To make the lids for the chafing dish, I've cut out 3 more sections of the same gum packaging. Now I've left enough of the packaging at the back so that it's flush with the back of the base, but I did trim up the front a little bit. I'm going to make a paper hinge to hold the lid onto the back of the unit. Now the base is 51 millimeters long, but I'm going to leave a couple millimeters on each side. So I'm going to cut my piece of paper at about 47 millimeters. The width of the paper is about 6 millimeters. And this is just standard copy paper. And once you have it cut out, fold it in half lengthwise. Then make sure your fold line is nice and crisp. I'm going to paint the hinge black so that A, it's not as noticeable, and also because the paint will give it just a little bit more durability. I'm painting just half of the outside of the fold, and then I'll paint the entire inside of the fold as well. Once you have it all painted, make sure that you leave the fold open as you let it dry. This one unpainted edge is what's going to be glued down to the top of the base. Now that everything is dry, I'm going to start by attaching the hinge to the lid itself. Just make sure that the folded side of that hinge is towards the edge. Now we'll add some glue onto the unpainted section, and we're going to attach that directly to the base. Now I'm just using a clean toothpick just to push that paper down onto the base of the chafing dish. It's time for some details now. So I've taken 2 wooden dowels. One is about 3 millimeters in diameter, the other one 5 millimeters, and I've just painted the ends of them. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off a sliver that's about 1 or 2 millimeters in width from each of these pieces of dowel. The larger of the 2 will be my temperature dial, and the smaller one will be the on-off switch. Before I glue on that temperature dial, I want to paint just some very thin white stripes all the way around the outside. I've added just a tiny bit of glue to the back of those little pieces, and I'm just going to glue them onto the front. I picked up these water transfer nail art stickers from Temu, and in the middle of each sheet was this number that I'm sure is part of their serial number, and I've had it soaking in water. Now, it is definitely not an official logo of any chafing dish. It does, however, give the impression that there's a make or a model of this dish on the front. We're getting close. We just need to add a few handles. So these ones are going to go on the sides of the unit. So I'm just cutting these out of the chipboard, and all I've done here is just cut a very thin rectangle and just trimmed off 2 of the corners. And then we're going to paint them black and add some podge so that the paint stays in place. So here's my 2 handles, and I'm just going to go ahead and attach them. And we just add a little bit of glue onto the bottom edge. Now I just need one more handle for the lid. So again, I've cut this one from chipboard as well, and it's about 10 millimeters by about 3 millimeters. So we'll go ahead and add a little bit of glue onto each end, and then we're just going to attach it to the middle of the lid. And that'll bring us to the end of this tutorial. I hope you like this little chafing dish. I can't wait to put it on top of the new hutch for the dining room. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.